basketball between my legs. So every time I took a step, I fell. So I started out my life laying on my face. And, I was a daddy's girl, but my parents divorced when I was 7, so I'm dealing with the heartbreak of that. And then my mother remarried, and her and my stepdad, they fought violently, and my sister and I were neglected. So by the time I was in my teens, I thought God hated me.
So now, how was your walking at this point?
At that point, I had 2 surgeries. I had my first surgery when I was 4 years old on both legs. When I was 10 years old, I had a second surgery on my right leg. When I was 12 years old, I was diagnosed with arthritis in both my knees. So I spent most of my life suffering from physical pain, emotional pain, and that finally developed into a psychological and lastly a spiritual pain. Because I'm like, God, I'm a kid. Why am I suffering like this? So it was a difficult journey.
So then, were you going to church? Were you in church when you were young?
As a child, my parents sent my brothers and sisters to Sunday school, and we would stay for church sometime. It was a Methodist church, so they didn't have service every Sunday. So we went to Sunday school. So, and I talk about that in my book. It's like I went to church, so, I had been taught that Jesus loves all the little children of the world, but I was confused because I didn't feel like he loved me at all.
Because of what you were going
Because
through.
of what I was going through.
Okay. So, you were a teenager.
So I'm a teenager, just feeling completely lost, and I prayed to God, please forgive me, help me. I don't know what I've done wrong, and it seemed like he wasn't listening. And it wasn't until, so I went through my teenage years, high school, middle school. It was all just school. I didn't have any problems in school, but I was so sad. And I had put on this mask of showing the world who I thought they wanted to see. But that wasn't me at all. So here I am. I've got all of these secrets. I'm in pain. I don't want my friends to know. I thought arthritis was something just for old people. So I'm in pain by the end of the day, every day.
And your friends don't know this?
That my friends don't know.
Wow.
They don't know about my home life. Sometimes I would show up to school on Monday mornings not having slept the whole weekend because they were fighting the entire time. So there was that, and my friends, they had no idea. So I'm just carrying this weight around, and just feeling sad and broken and lonely, and just completely forgotten. Invisible is the word I like to use.
And you were how old? How many years? What kind of year span is it?
So when I got to that point, I would say I was probably 16 or 17 years old. But I had been feeling just that loneliness and brokenness for a really long time. Because honestly, the night that we moved out from my dad when I was 7, I started wetting the bed. And I had stopped wetting the bed as a toddler.
Right.
I continued to wet the bed throughout my teens. I didn't stop wetting the bed till I was 19. But I didn't realize till I went away to college that was stress. It was like I wet the bed almost every night. Nobody knew.
Wow.
Yeah.
Your mom didn't know?
But people in my household knew, but nobody outside of that knew.
Right. Wow. So did you ever see your dad?
We did. We lived in the same small town. So my sister and I, we would go spend the weekend with him because eventually, at some point, my brothers we all started out living with my mom, but eventually my 2 brothers went to live with my dad. So we would go visit him and, had a great time. Now, neither one of my parents are perfect, but I was a daddy's girl. So, being with him made me feel really special, but this was 70s, early 80s. So people raise children a little bit differently in that area than they do now. We saw him, we would visit on the weekends.
Okay. So you leave home to go to college.
Yes. I went to college. I went to actually NC State in Raleigh.
Okay.
And I chose NC State because I wanted to disappear. And I knew that college campus had 25,000 people in it. It's like I can go there.
You're going to be paying that much attention.
I would just fade into the background. And I did. And had very few friends because I wouldn't talk to anybody. But the loneliness or the world that I was trying to escape, it just followed me.
Right.
So by the time I was a sophomore, situation arose with my roommate where she wasn't coming back, and I used that as an excuse to leave because I'm like, you're not going to make it here. You can't make it here. My self-confidence and self-esteem was so low at that point that I'm like, I just walked away, and I was very smart. I graduated in high school at the top 10% of my class. Was doing very well academically. academically in school, but I was suffering so much psychologically at that point, I couldn't see anything.
And nobody caught that, your teachers, your counselors?
Nobody. Nobody. It's like even my friends didn't know. My family didn't know. As a matter of fact, my brothers didn't know most of them anything about me or how I felt until they read my book.
Really?
Yes. We had never spoken about how they went to live with my dad. I left school 91. I stayed 2 years and went back to my small town, but started working. But I was just so broken and suffering so much. Again, just thinking that God had forgotten about me and that I felt like I didn't have anybody and I didn't have anybody to turn to. No, not my parents, not my siblings, because I just felt alone. But I kind of had a road to Damascus experience when I was 23. I was on my way home from work. Of course, I'm working, but I'm broke, living hand to mouth, literally. And I was coming home, and my car started making a loud ding and snore. So I stopped and I pulled up, let the hood up, and there was oil everywhere. So I slowly drove home and just completely despondent. So I laid on my bed that day, and I wasn't crying. I was just so numb. I couldn't think. So I was just like, God, if you've ever heard me, please help me. Now, in that moment, I wasn't suicidal, but I didn't want to be here anymore. I just wanted to get in my car and drive away, but I didn't have a car anymore. So I was like, please help me. And in that moment, I heard a knock at my door. I tell this story in the book as well. And the man at the door, I didn't know him. And I started not to answer it, but God said, open the doors for you. And he literally dropped his papers on the ground. It's like, I've been dreaming about you every night for months now. It's like, God sent me here to save you. So I invited him. Long story short, I invited him. He begins to tell me things and stuff that I have felt that I have never spoken a word to anybody about. Wow. And in that day was the first time that I realized that although I knew who God was, he knew who I was too. And that changed my perspective a little bit, but again, you have to remember that I've been suffering my entire life. I'm about 25 now, 23. And so I started to go to church, and I'm already dealing with chronic pain, but I had no idea that my pain was going to go to a level that I never even experienced before physically. Mm-hmm. So although I know who God is at this point, I'm still suffering, and every day and every week and every month, every year, it's getting worse instead of better. So I found myself in my 30s. At 32, I found out I needed my right knee replaced. By the time I was 35, I could barely walk across the room because at that point, both knees were shot. 37, I started using a cane and a leg brace, and by the time I reached my 40s, I was like, God, I know, let me back up a little bit. When I was 35, I had a screaming, crying match with God. I'm like, you told me I was supposed to be a teacher, because I had a vision when I was 25. And I went to sleep, cried myself to sleep that day on the couch. And in a dream, God told me that my pain was part of my purpose, that all the suffering that I could not do what I needed to do for the kingdom until I went through this. And that included the physical pain, the neglect, the spiritual pain, all of the things. It was building me so that I would have the tools that I needed to be able to help his people. So now, that led to my journey to becoming a life coach. I started a blog for talking about pain, chronic pain, and spiritual wellness and physical wellness, which so by the time, when I reached my 40s, I was like, you know what, I'm still not getting anywhere in life. God, what is this about? And but he kept shaping me, he kept molding me, he kept working with me.
So you're still in physical pain?
I'm still in physical pain. That my pain didn't end until I was 45 when I got both of my knees replaced. And that was decades earlier than they wanted me to. But at that point, I got my knees replaced, and then I was able to start doing some of the work that he had for me to do. But it wasn't until I went through all of those things that he had me in a position where he could use me. So, that brought about my coaching business. I coach people who have chronic pain and chronic illnesses because people don't realize what being in pain like that does for you. Like, yeah, you're hurting, but there is nothing like the feeling of betrayal. We've all been betrayed at some point, whether it's by a friend or a spouse or somebody. We face some kind of betrayal. But when it's your own body, you don't know what to do with that. You be like, because, I can be mad with you, but this is me.
Yeah, you're thinking about it everywhere you go.
taking it everywhere you go. Every night when you're asleep, you still feel that pain. You're not really sleeping. So it's just this constant thing. It's like it's the ultimate betrayal. So I talk with people and I work with people who are dealing with something of that magnitude where unless you've been through it, you really don't understand it. And that's one of the things my whole journey taught me. Stop telling people I understand. I have no frame of reference to understand. I don't have any children. I don't know what the pain of childbirth is like.
Right.
So for me to tell you, girl, I understand that, it's not the truth. But what I can do is sympathize and empathize with you so that you know that you're not alone in this. Because it's a lonely, lonely place to feel that.
Wow. So you started coaching people.
Started coaching people, started doing speaking engagements, and just really sharing my story with people. And then God put me in a position, I always knew I wanted to write a book. And the book that came out last year, Can These Bones Live Again, was actually my 5th book. But my first 4, I wrote specifically for people who have chronic arthritis and chronic pain.
Oh.
And I used my experiences as a chronic pain sufferer and my experience as a life coach to help them move forward. Because sometimes we have to make peace with the pain. That means that I don't know when or if this is ever going to end, but I've got a choice. What am I going to do with this now? I can lay down and die, or I can live. And I made a decision that I wanted to live, so I wanted to use my tools that I had. I like to call it a toolbox. The stuff I have in my toolbox to help other people make that choice that I want to live.
So all of the things that you went through led to Can These Bones Live?
Yes, that is my memoir, in which I tell, I start out from the beginning. When I'm a little girl, when I'm a toddler, I go through the neglect that my sister and I experienced. I go through the 11 orthopedic surgeries I had. But then, in the middle of the book, I talk about how God used all those things and how he used my suffering and my pain and turned that into joy and to triumph. So that's why I brought that, used Ezekiel 37, verses 1 through 10, as the backdrop for this, Can These Bones Live Again? And actually, the cover for my book, God gave that to me in a dream.
Really?
Yes, he did. It's like, because it's a trail of broken bones, and there's this empty, shadowy figure walking down the trail, because that's how I felt, empty, invisible, and forgotten. So that everything about that book is directly from God.
Well, let me ask you this. I want to know what you felt like when you got because once you got your knees replaced, you had a release of physical pain, correct?
Correct. It felt like freedom for the first time in my life. And honestly, today, because I was bow-legged for the first 45 years of my life, when I look down, I'm still amazed that I have straight legs for the first time ever. And there was this sense of freedom and exhilaration and a joy, an unspeakable joy, that I walk around almost giddy every day still now, because it was a struggle for me to walk from 2 or 3 feet. So now to be walking without a cane, without a brace. I work out with a trainer every Saturday. That man got me running. I couldn't run.
Wow.
The simple things that you are able to do in life. I used to be kind of OCD about cleaning up in the early years, but I stopped because I couldn't tolerate standing up. So, to be able to do those simple things, to be able to care for myself, to be able to shop for myself, to be able to go for a walk when I want to. I walk when it's raining outside. I walk when it's windy, when it's cold. Everybody in my neighborhood, they know me because I don't stay inside.
Right.
It's like,
And the things that you are saying really are things that we have taken for granted. Being able to walk without falling, or walk without being in pain, or going to bed at night without being in pain. A lot of people take those kinds of things for granted.
I didn't realize just how much I was taking for granted. And even when the pain was bad, when I thought it couldn't get any worse, it kept getting worse. And it kept getting worse. But by that point, again, I'd had my Road to Damascus experience. I had the crying, screaming match. So after I had the screaming match with God, instead of, wishing my life was different, I started asking God 2 questions. What is it that you want me to learn from this? And how can I use this to help somebody else? So every time a new struggle came up, every time the pain got worse, every time the doctor gave me more bad news, I was like, okay, God, what is it that you want me to learn? And how can I use this to help somebody else? My doctor told me one time, he's like, I don't know how to take you. He's like, because you come in here and I keep telling you bad news. And he was like, and you're just smiling at me. And it's like, because I know there's a purpose to this.
Mm.
And it was like, and God is going to use me to bless some people. You know, when I was a teenager, I had this dream of being a heart surgeon. And I let it go because, you know, again, I was low self-esteem, low confidence. And I'm like, I could never do that. And I was riding down the road one day, and it hit me. God told me, he's like, you wanted to be a heart surgeon. He's like, you're going to be a heart surgeon of a different kind. You're going to mend broken hearts.
Wow.
I almost wrecked my car that day. But it was amazing to me that something that he planted in me as a child, it was still being manifested, just not in the way that I anticipated.
And those two questions are two powerful questions that we all need to ask when we are going through stuff. Oh my gosh, you're probably helping me.
Well, hallelujah.
Wow, that is something now, and it's totally simple. It's not like she had to dig from somewhere. Those are two very powerful questions.
Yeah, because again, when he told me that there was a purpose to this, I went into it with both feet. I leapt into it, and I knew that sometimes this journey was going to get hard, and it was going to be. Sometimes I didn't want to do it, and I was like, God, I know this is my purpose, and I know you have something for me to do, but can you just hide me for a minute? And he would. That's the amazing thing. Like I use Psalms 27. You know, when my enemies should encamp against me, hide me in your provision. I'd like, God, please hide me from this pain for just a minute. I know this is mine to bear, and I'm gonna do it. But I need you to hide me for just a second from the pain, and just like that, it would be gone. It would come back, but it would be enough for me to be like, God, I know you see me, and I'm ready to do this. I'm ready to take another step for you.
This is awesome. This is awesome. Wow. Wow. You know what? I want to thank Miss Peggy Tatum. Because had it not been for her, we would not have met.
Yeah.
Now, tell me, on that day we met, but you also came across Ambassador Dr. Sharon Edmond.
It's amazing how we met. I had no idea who she was, but I still remember what she had on that day. It was a beautiful African print, and it had this long veil on it, and I just walked up to her and told her, I was like, you are the most beautiful thing I've ever seen. You've got a light in you. Yeah, I was like, I didn't know who she was, and she was like, just thank you, baby. She didn't tell me who she was. I had no idea until I sat down. But she was the expediter and
She was
the host of this of the luncheon that was being held for the Women of Triumph. And that particular day, I knew I was coming back here. So I began to visit the regular Sunday. No, I began to visit on Tuesdays, the women's ministry.
I think I started inviting you.
You did. And I started coming, and then I started coming on Sundays. Ambassador, it is unlike anybody I've ever known. Her prophetic gifts are amazing. I've seen people in the service be relieved of pain, be healed on the spot. And she's spoken into my life. Just the things that are to come for me. So she has been a tremendous blessing to me, and just to be in her presence is renewing and refreshing to me. It's like, because I know her gifts are real.
Yes, they are.
And she's just so genuine. Like it doesn't matter. You know, she can be in the middle of a sermon and she see you, just like, hey, Kimmy. And I love it though. It's like you don't have to put on these airs and this. Just have this facade about you. She's a leader that is approachable,
yes,
and accessible, which you don't often find.
Right.
It's like, so she's just a wonderful, wonderful gift, and I have to thank Miss Peggy for that, because the two of them are the closest of friends, and I had no idea what being a woman of triumph was going to mean for my relationship with Miss Peggy or with Ambassador.
Yeah. And you said something. She is approachable. She is touchable, and you would not know who she was because she is so very down to earth. And I wonder sometimes, because she does that, even when she does Facebook Lives, she can be preaching hard and see somebody's name pop up, and she'll be like, hey, baby, how you doing? And then she'll go right back to where she was. I would never be able to do that because my mind will be on the person, and she loves people.
She does.
She loves people.
It's just evident in how she responds to everybody that, she truly has a heart for people.
Mm-hmm. She does. Okay, Kim, every Saturday morning, you do a Facebook Live. Tell us about that.
I do. It actually came about quite coincidentally. I was sitting outside because I'm a nature person. I was sitting outside one Saturday morning having my coffee, and I was just listening around. I got a hummingbird feeder and flowers, and God said, show this to the people. It's like, show them what? It's like, show them. So I turned my phone on and started a Facebook Live where I went around my garden and I began to talk about the plants, but then I began to use the plants and things in nature and relate it back to life. So I use my skills as a life coach. I usually give a tip about life coaching, but I also, because I'm a certified life coach, but I'm also a certified Christian coach. So I take those tips from life coaching, and then I add a spiritual aspect to it, and I relate it all back to something in nature. And so people really took to it, and I was stunned. It was like, because this wasn't anything that I had planned on doing. And after I did that first one, people contacted me, people that I know intimately who would text me, and then people on Facebook, when is the next one? So I started doing them every Saturday morning. Now, the time is the 9 o'clock hour-ish, because I am a speaker. I work out every Saturday morning, and those times fluctuate.
Okay.
But it's usually sometime between 8 and 9 on Saturday mornings. But unless I'm traveling and I'm in some area that I can't get a signal, I do it every Saturday morning. And then once it got too cold, I brought the garden inside. It's like we're sitting in my, it's actually at my kitchen table now. But the premise is in the garden with joyful living, so that we can learn to live joyfully every day through the tips that I give, through the life coaching tips. But how to relate that to God and the promises that He has for us. And how that talk about sometimes how we are not living joyfully and how we're walking around manipulating and burdened. That's not what God intended for us. It's like, so why aren't we experiencing and living in the joy that we were created for? It's like I started an extension of my business, Joyful Apparel and Accessories, which God gave to me in a dream. And my first T-shirt is "Joy is your birthright," because I think some of us have forgotten that we walk around and we're just going through life day to day and not really experiencing the love, the joy, and the happiness, the fruits of the Spirit that have been given to us. We're not experiencing that. So that's what I use in the Garden of Joyful Living for, to number one, remind us of who we are in God. It was like He knew you before you were born. You got purpose and passion and promise on your life. So I remind people of who they are. I help them deal with the stresses and the burden, because we all got to go to work. We got to make a living. We got family. We got kids. It's a lot of stuff going on. So I give people practical stuff that you can use, because prayer is great, and we all should be praying and fasting and studying our word. But sometimes people ask me, like, okay, I went to church. They told me to pray. How can I apply this to in the life that I'm living now? It's like the Bible is relevant. It's still very much relevant, yes. But we got to know how to apply it. And sometimes in preaching ministries, it's not being taught. So I use this kind of a bridge of things that we can use every day in our life to live a little bit more joyfully, and then remind us of the promises that God already made to us. We are heirs. It's time that we start living like heirs.
And I'm smiling because I'm thinking about your story as a child. I'm looking at where you are now. That is amazing. And I know nobody did that but God. Nobody but God.
It's like, how the old people in the old church say He walks with me and He talks with me?
Mm-hmm.
That thing is real. Yeah. And I know that without a shadow of a doubt, that God is with me every day. Even in the good times and the bad times, the sun is shining, when it's raining, and even actually when it's cloudy and raining, I feel a sense of peace and comfort. Mm-hmm. How He covered the children of Israel when they were in the wilderness. Cover them with clouds by day. Anytime clouds are present, that's the presence of God. So when I see a cloud rolling in, I'm like, hey, how you doing, Daddy? What are you going to show me today? Showing us something every day, but do we listen? Do we look? Do we feel? That's the things that I help people with in the Garden of Joyful Living, like just to be aware of His presence, and then some tips on how we can just live a little bit better.
Well, quickly, give us your information so that people can join you live, purchase your book, purchase some of your merchandise and your accessories.
Okay. I am Kimberly Dixon again. My website is www.joyfullivingwithkimberlydixon.com. On Saturday mornings, it is In the Garden with Joyful Living. I am on Instagram as Joyful Kimberly Dixon. I am on Twitter as Joyful Kimberly Dixon. What else is there? You can email me at coach@joyfullivingwithkimberlydixon.com. Everything is Joyful Living with Kimberly Dixon, and Dixon is Dixon. My books are available on my website. The t-shirts are available on my website. And as the year continues, we will expand the line to include additional items. But please visit my website. If you need a speaker, please reach out to me at 919-977-3160.
Thank you for joining me, Kim. It was a pleasure having you on the show.
Vita, thank you for having me. It was just a privilege and an honor to be here with you. Thank you.
And thank you for joining us for another edition of Sage Testimonials with Vita. Again, we'd like to thank our sponsors, Crown Ministries and Ben Jones Turkey Barbecue. Thanks again for joining us, and God bless you.